Handcrafted and procedurally generated environments, designing worlds for the player. How do handcrafted and procedurally generated environments affect the player's experience in survival games and how are they different?
When designing a game, a space for the player to exist within and interact with is needed to start. We call this the game environment. Two of the most popular methods for creating this space are procedural generation and handcrafting. Hello everyone, we are Datran,
And Andre Fonsale.
and today we are here to discuss how do handcrafted and procedurally generated environments affect the player experience in survival games, and potentially which one game developers should choose when making an environment. We will be exploring the strengths and weaknesses of each method and how they differ from one another, referencing popular survival games to represent our chosen topic and to relate our discussion to popular game examples.
What are handcrafted environments? Handcrafted environments are designed and created by game developers through planning and experiments, focusing on how the environment interacts with itself and how the player then interacts with the environment. This method allows for greater depth within the narrative, world design, and gameplay, while also allowing the designers to have full control over the game to create the world they envisioned. The relationship between the handcrafted environment and the player experience is shown in popular games such as Subnautica and The Forest.
And what are procedurally generated environments? Well, procedurally generated environments are made by using algorithm instead of manually crafting them. The environment is created by setting a rules and instruction that the computer will follow to automatically create an environment. This allowed the randomization within games, which can often lead to a more unique experience every time the player press play, just like in games such as Minecraft and Terraria.
So, what do we mean by the player experience? The long answer questions what does the player get out of the game? Is the game enjoyable to play? Does it create a sense of excitement or wonder? Are you getting immersed in the world and the story, or does it make you feel strong emotions? Without getting too in depth, the short answer is the player experience is how the player feels while playing a game.
So why do you favor handcrafted environments?
I think simply put, I like the depth and detail of handcrafted environments. They offer a world to the player that wants to be both experienced and explored, space that a player can feel a part of and actively want to exist in. It comes from the control offered to the designers and developers by using this method. When you handcraft an environment, you have the means to direct the space and design it around your game's needs, whether that be a stronger focus on the gameplay, narrative, art, or something else. Planning, testing, and creating your game environment by hands help you as a developer understand the environment that you create, and by extension, how the player will come to know the space. Not only leads to a more detailed and beautiful space, but allows for greater personalization and the ability to showcase the environment you want while considering the experience designed for the player. That being said, I acknowledge that the method of handcrafted environments isn't always easy and is often quite time consuming and labor intensive, which leads to limitations on the scale of the environment. However, where the method creates challenges for the designers, it similarly creates opportunities. A good example of this is world borders. Survival games, like most games, often come with an end to their space, a place that the player cannot pass for reasons often unexplained. Well, the concept of world borders has been around for as long as open areas to explore have been in games. What to do with this space is often overlooked as becoming a mere barrier. However, in the survival horror game Subnautica, a common challenge becomes a feature, tying the game's playable space into the supposed barrier. Subnautica plays with its horror themes and handcrafted environment to not hide but showcase this world border when approached by alerting the player. The ecology of the trench surrounding the crater supports only two kinds of life, microscopic and Leviathan class. Exploration is ill advised. The handcrafted environment creates an opportunity to turn a world border from a challenge to the developers to an in game threat to the players, supporting the experience created by the rest of the game. So, yeah, I find the depth and detail of handcrafted environments to often enhance the experience of being within the game. It's a method that allows for a lot of opportunities and can always be personalized to the needs of the game. How about you?
That is true, but one aspect that a handcrafted environment will not be able to compete with is replayability, which is where procedural generation will come into play. Procedural generation offer unique player experience, especially in survival games, since the environment will differ through each playthrough. player will not feel like the game is too predictable, and that is what will drive the player to come back for more. According to Matthew Grover, if you are low on budget or short on deadline, procedural generation is a great option as the computer will do everything for you as long as you set up proper rules and instructions for it to follow. By using this method, developers can save money on human resources since procedural generation can create an environment more effectively. Furthermore, depending on how well the procedural generation is done, games like Minecraft, which use a combination of procedural generation with carefully structured rules, became a massive hit since each plays create a whole new player experience for the player enjoyment. One method suggested by Joris Dolzman and Sanders Bakasis suggests separating the mission, which is the task that the player must complete, and the space, which is the actual play environment, by themselves, so that the randomness is balanced by good design principles to create a cohesive space.
Yes, and while that's often beneficial, doesn't it leave a divide between the different aspects of the game? Another strength of handcrafted environments is that the developers can tie all the different aspects of their game together in ways that make sense to the player. The narrative, environment, and gameplay often feel better when it's part of a whole. When you design a handcrafted environment, it can be created with the player in mind. Points of interest can be carefully mapped out, and parts connecting them can become a feature instead of just an empty space. There isn't a need for endless worlds when you make proper use of the space you have. Planning and containing your game within bounds also creates an opportunity for the player to explore and immerse themselves within the environment. While going through endless landscapes can be exciting at first, the scenes can quickly become a collage of unimportant or unimpactful places you see once and move on. With a handcrafted environment, it is much easier to give purpose to these spaces. Once again, looking at Subnautica, the handcrafted environment is used not only as a space the player can exist within, but to also direct the player, encouraging them to experience all the game has to offer. As stated by Dr. Ian Murray, the player can, and in fact needs to, move through every biome of the game's enthralling world, looking into every cave, at every animal, and gathering every resource with total freedom. Overall, entwining the major aspects of a game together creates a more polished product and environment where every detail is a feature that the player can enjoy experiencing and actively want to spend time in. And while this outcome is not limited to handcrafted environments, it is easier to achieve by this method.
True, I agree that handcrafted environment does have that polished aspect to it. However, there is just something exciting about the unpredictable factor that is only found in procedural generation. When a procedural generation is done well, it can create an amazing sense of discovery that can be replicated in each world. The mystery of what lies ahead and the feeling of never knowing what is going to happen next just make your curiosity tinkle with excitement. Take Terraria, for example. Every time you launch a new game, you might stumble across beautiful caves or rare structure that is hidden inside a rare biome. These discoveries is what will create meaningful memories for the player since they are achievements and stories that you have created by yourself instead of a moment in time that a developer was guiding you towards. That is called emergent gameplay, where the world acts as a sandbox and provide opportunity for unexpected events, which is at the core of what makes a survival game so engaging. In procedurally generated game, each player experience is unique, and this is something that cannot be replicated using handcrafting environment.
That's a good point. One of the clearest weaknesses of handcrafted environments is the restrictions on content and variety. Without a large team and funding, it is impractical to create an environment that allows for a unique experience every time. However, that is not to say excitement and unpredictability are the only factors that make it an enjoyable player experience. Where procedurally generated environments win out in the quantity of gameplay and experiences, handcrafted environments offer a greater connection between the player and the environment. When creating an environment by hand, the designers have much greater control over the tone or feel of the game they are trying to create. Being able to match the environment to the intended experience allows the player to connect to the game, finding emotion in the narrative or wonder in the world. Immersion is a powerful tool developers can use to captivate their players and enhance their gameplay experience. With that in mind, without experience, handcrafted environments that focus too greatly on a single aspect can result in a game that leaves its full impact on the player within the first playthrough. While not necessarily a wrong choice, A lack of replayability or experiences is more prominent in handcrafted environments and can negatively affect the player if not considered carefully. However, if your game intends to leave an impression or take its time leading up to a grand reveal that changes how the player experiences the game, then the lack of replayability may not be a negative mark on the player experience at all, but rather a tool to enhance the climax or turning point in the game. Such as in the forest, where many exciting discoveries and important details of the world building and environment leave a lasting impact during a player's first playthrough, before moving on to set the scene and encourage the player to try new approaches during the following playthroughs.
I will admit that with a handcrafted environment, you can design a specific moment to invoke a particular emotion in which procedurally generated environments fall behind. However, procedurally generated environments do provide different type of emotional experience in the form of unpredictability, which can create high tension within games. Since the environments are randomly generated every time, players won't know what is coming up next, thus creating tension. Furthermore, the randomness of procedurally generated environments makes the game feels more dynamic and on-the-fly challenges, since the environment will force you to adapt in a way you might not expect, which is perfect for a survival game, considering that unpredictability can make a game feel more immersive as it represents reality and how life is full of on-the-go decision making. With that in mind, since procedurally generated environments are cost effective and quick to create, creating new test world and environment, also known as prototyping, for developers to test the game mechanics inside multiple different variations of the terrain is as simple as pressing one button, just as long as you can set the rules inside the algorithm correctly.
So, after this, I guess we can agree that both methods have their strengths and weaknesses. The important part is what method suits your situation as a developer and how you intend to design around the player experience.
Yes, I think that procedurally generated environments excel in making unique and replayable environments, dedicated to allowing the players to repeatedly experience the same game in a new way with each playthrough. This means that the player will never find the game predictable and the content feel fresh and exciting each time. Also, unpredictability of procedurally generated environments adds to the sense of tension featuring in survival games. The player will never know the limits of the environment or what to expect around the next corner. The excitement of the unknown and dynamic randomness of procedural generation forces the player to adapt in the new and exciting ways that the player may never expected, making it a great tool for creating environments for a better player experience. Another benefit of procedural generation environment is the accessibility to the developer. It allows more options for smaller team, lower budget, or strict time limits without compromising on the quality, allowing them to focus on what the player wants from the game.
That sounds good to me. And as for handcrafted environments, the depth and detail creates space players want to experience and explore, where they can feel a part of the game and actively push the story forwards. The strength of handcrafted environments is that it allows developers greater control over the experience they wish to create, allowing an easier time to tie different core aspects of the game together in a way that makes sense, polishing the experience for the player. Handcrafted environments also offer a greater connection to the player, allowing developers much more control over the tone and feel of the game, resulting in an experience personalized for the intended audience. Finally, handcrafted environments do require more work. It can be time consuming and expensive. That being said, it's a method that allows you to direct the space and design the player experience around the needs of your game. Planning, testing, and creating your game environment by hand helps you as a developer understand the environment that you create, and by extension, how the players will come to know this space.
Thank you for listening.
We hope that these methods are useful to future game developers.